know you can't get enough of Rainier Avenue Radio .world.
Black Dollar Day's King County Reparations Project cordially invites you to Remembering Black Wall Street, featuring Dr. Phil Armstrong.
Hello, Seattle and surrounding communities. I'm Phil Armstrong. I'm the director of the Greenwood Rising Black Wall Street History Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Please join me in Seattle this coming Saturday, February the 5th at Washington Hall at 5 p.m. for Remembering Black Wall Street. I look forward to engaging with everyone, whether you are joining us physically or virtually, for these important, courageous conversations.
For more information, visit eventbrite.com, Remembering Black Wall Street.
Women are not an homogenous group.
We face discrimination differently depending on factors such as ethnicity, age, socioeconomic status, and more.
Rainier Avenue Radio is proud to amplify women's voices.
They are the experts of their own lives, initiating conversations within their community about challenges they face, the solutions they're working on, and the opportunities they see.
Please join us this Sunday from 2 to 5 for Women's Voices on Air. We know our challenges. We are the experts of our lives.
We are master multitaskers, prioritizing our family, friends, and our faith above our own needs.
Our needs and voices are too often overlooked.
Please join us this Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. for Women's Voices on Air.
We tell our stories in our own way.
Here with the Rainier Avenue Radio Traffic Update. You can listen to us in your car 24/7 anytime by downloading the free TuneIn app. Once you do, search Rainier Avenue Radio. And remember, do not curse out your fellow drivers. This has been your Rainier Avenue Radio Traffic Update.
Welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio. This is Afternoons with Monique, recording live in Seattle, Washington, every Thursday at 1 p.m.
Good afternoon, Seattle. This is Monique Lee from Afternoons with Monique. You are on Rainier Avenue Radio. Today, I have the pleasure of inviting one of our local celebrity. Actually, she is a national on-air personality and commentator for many notable and reputable outlets. Please welcome to my show, Miss Ann Bremner.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Ben?
I'm fine. I have a little bit of flour in here because I'm down in Palm Springs, of all places, not in Seattle. So I just wanted to show a little bit of color.
You look as beautiful as ever. I love
that is you.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting about Ann and me is the first time, I have to share this with the audience. The first time I spotted you was in the Super Lawyers list of best lawyers in Seattle. And I noticed that she has this beautiful photo. She looked like a movie star. I thought, who took Ann's photo? So I emailed you. I don't know if you remember this from way back when, like 10 years ago or 7 years ago. So you remember some strange woman out of the blue emailing you, asking you who took your photo? Do you remember this?
Yeah.
So I thought, how can I get this, kind of famous? I think you were even famous then, attorney, to give me the name of who helped her take this beautiful photo. And you were kind enough to give me his name and, the poster that we used to feature you and me on the picture that is on the left side, my picture. That was inspiration from you. I have to give you credit.
You look beautiful as always. Gorgeous.
Thank you, Ann. So not only Ann is well, first let's start from the beginning, because I know you have a lot of. So I read your biography, and you have a long line of accolades and accomplishments in the years that you live in Seattle. So let's start at Stanford, because I know that's where you were from, your alma mater, and share with us a little bit of your background, if you would please.
Sure. I grew up in Olympia, Washington, and I went to Stanford and graduated in 1980, a long time ago, in, of all things, medieval history, which was I really like the Middle Ages. It doesn't really help in being a lawyer, although it was a wonderful major. And then I came back up here because I love Seattle, and my family's been in the Pacific Northwest since 1880, up in Linden and Bellingham. My grandparents and their grandparents had farms up in Linden.
Oh, wow. So you were a local from the get-go. Okay. So and then you went to undergrad in Stanford, and you graduated honors, and you studied medieval history in Stanford at Stanford?
I did, and I actually thought I would go to grad school in it, but my dad said, that's enough already. I think you'd be a good lawyer, and I thought, I don't know if I want to do that.
Yeah, that would be such a loss for the legal community here if we didn't have you, and your opinions. And then you went to law school where?
At SU, and I graduated early in 1982. And then I went to clerk for a judge in King County Superior Court. Judge Dixon, who was wonderful. He was extremely well thought of, and he drove a Trans Am with flames down the side, of all things. And he was very accomplished, and I learned a lot about trials. And then I went to the prosecutor's office.
Right. And there, I think you, at some point, you became a national figure and commentator for numerous news outlets like CNN, CNBC, Court TV. Can you tell us how I'm very curious how you got your foot into the national scene?
I had a friend at Como TV who suggested I do commentary on the O.J. Simpson case. So I was they called us the O.J. girl at Como TV with Kathy Gertson and Dan Lewis. And then I tried a case, Mary Kay Letourneau. It got a lot of national attention, the civil case. And
wait, hold on. You tried that case?
I tried the civil case where Billy Falau sued the police and the school district for not protecting him from Mary. It was like an 11-week-long trial. I represented the police. Yeah, and so that's how I started doing the nationals, because Court TV covered it live. And it was internationally covered. It was just a very famous case. So that's how I started. Court TV said, hey, if you're ever in New York, we'd like to put you on the air. So I had a friend of mine going to New York, and I said, I've just happened to be in New York, went on Court TV, and then from there started doing other outlets.
Right. And I understand that you also covered other notable cases, and I may miss some here, but I think you had something. You spoke about Amanda Knox case, and of course the two that I know of is the Amanda Knox case and the Mary Kay Letourneau, but I'm sure there are others, and you recently won a landslide, basically a big victory that was featured in the Seattle Times. So I would love to know a little bit about that before asking you what you're currently working on. So,
thank you. We just finished in my firm. We represented the family of Susan Cox Powell. Remember, she was missing in Utah. She's never been found. We represented the family when her boys were taken into CPS, Child Protective Custody, in Washington State. And there were a number of red flags about their dad, of course, that he killed their mom, and that they've been witnesses to that. They said things like mommy was in the trunk of the car, mommy's was looking at mines, because he took them camping at midnight, remember, when they were 2 and 4 and in a blizzard in Utah. And that's the night Susan disappeared. Long story short is, in our case, we had like 67 red flags about Josh, that the kids should not be with Josh. They were taken from Josh's house because he was in a house of horrors with his dad that had porn, and there were gallows and the noose hanging from the ceiling. I could go on and on, but the kids were removed. But then they were given back to Josh, and he killed them. He set the house on fire and killed them with a hatchet.
I remember that.
Remember that? It's a horrible case. And so we tried it to an amazing jury during the pandemic, and the jury awarded $115 million in that case. The net was $98.5 million. But it's an important verdict in terms of protection of children that are in state custody in our state or any state.
Right. Now, I think that family resided in Washington State, but they have background. They came from Utah. Is that why how you came to represent them?
Exactly. And the family has always been here, but then Susan and Josh had moved to Utah when she went missing. So the grandparents who I represent, they've always been in Puyallup. and they're wonderful people. They've been through a lot of tragedy. They're people of faith, and like they say, they just put one foot in front of the other, but they're really gratified by that jury verdict in our case.
I can't tell you how exciting. I mean, these are all tragedy, but the fact that you get to intimately be involved in cases of this magnitude, it's just you're one of a kind in Washington State. Basically, when I turn on the TV, occasionally I watch Nancy Grace, and I saw you. I'm like, hey, I know that lady. She's a local celebrity around here.
Yeah, so, that's you, Monique. You're the celebrity. You do so much for Seattle too. So thank you.
Thank you for saying that. So for those of you who just tuned in, we were just talking about a few of the cases that Anne Bremner, she's an attorney at Freybuck and Associates right now. She represents many nationally known cases, and also she serves as a commentator, legal analyst for major national news outlets such as CNN, CNBC, Court TV. Am I missing a few more? I think there.
No, I mean those are the main ones. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you have a few books out, right?
I have one coming out. It's called Justice in the Age of Judgement. And it'll be out with Simon & Schuster.
Oh, okay. When are we going to have that announced?
I hope in the next few months. And my little brother actually helped me on it. He's a psychiatrist who's written a lot of books. And so it's under both of our names. He's a doctor, psychiatrist, professor at Emory in Atlanta. So it's a dual author, brother-sister authored book.
So now I just discovered something new. You're not the only smart one in the family. Yeah. You have other siblings who are smart. So tell me a little bit. Let's backtrack and learn a little history here, because we always want to know, where did all that rain and looks come from, right?
Yeah.
So
right.
tell us about your family, your parents. What did they do? Do you have siblings? And whatever you want to share, we would love to learn more about you.
Oh, thank you. There's my dad was a psychiatrist. He's doing well. That my parents are in Olympia. My mom's a psychiatric nurse, and there's 4 siblings. I'm the second to the youngest. My brother I just told you about. I have another brother who is a runner and a climber and served in the Air Force for a long time, and now he just became a city councilman. He was kind of anti-establishment growing up, and now he's part of the establishment in Colorado, in his small town, Manitow Springs. My sister's in Long Beach, Washington, and she's been involved in education and a lot of projects in Long Beach, basically Ilwaco, Washington. And she's somebody that makes her own cheese and does art and raises chickens and is she's very talented. Yeah, exactly. So that's the 4 of us, and my folks raised us in Olympia, and that was a great small town to be from. It's not so small now, but they're still there, and they love it down there.
Well, so you're the only lawyer in the family, and what a star you become.
Oh, thank you.
How did that happen? How did you become a lawyer? What made you decide to become a lawyer?
Well, I always say that my dad bribed me. It was kind of funny. He said, he goes, I wanted to go to graduate school in medieval history, and or go to the Macy's management training program in San Francisco, because I was down in Stanford. And he said, if you go to law school, I'll help you with tuition. I'll assist with books, things like that, and you'd be a terrific lawyer. The first day I started law school, a classmate of mine from Stanford quit. She decided she didn't want to do it. So I got her apartment, took over her apartment and rent, her books, everything. It was kind of amazing. I had a little apartment in Tacoma that was $150 a month, all utilities included.
Wow. Well, that was a while ago. Now we don't get that price in Capitol Hill anymore. You must have lived in Cap Hill around there.
No, that was down in Tacoma, but then I did live on Capitol Hill when I became a new lawyer, and I lived in the Marlborough House at University in Boren, where my grandma had lived when she first got married. So that was kind of neat.
Right. Okay. So now that we learned a little bit about your background, I'm kind of impressed that you have a kind of a long line of, educated, intellectuals in your family. Can you tell us a little bit about the book that is coming out?
Sure. It has a theme, and it's called Justice in the Age of Judgment, and it's basically talking about how our first impressions just dictate what we think about something. Think about cancel culture, think about what we see in social media, think about how critical we can be about things that we read about from the very beginning. And so what I talk about in the book is about trials and legal cases and how important it is that we try these in the courtroom. And for example, the Amanda Knox case is a great example. A lot of people decided they thought she was guilty in the very beginning, and I was one of them, and just based on what I read in the media. And yet that case was so evident that she was clearly innocent. The only physical evidence that they linked to her wasn't linked to her. She was exonerated by independent experts. There was no hairs, no fiber, nothing to link her to this horrible homicide. And yet, in the court of public opinion, she was basically vilified for a long time. That's changed. Of course, Seattle's really supported her in a wonderful way. But that's kind of the theme of the book is that how do we try cases now? And I'm speaking as a lawyer, and cases that I try and cases that I cover. How can we try these cases in the age of judgment and the internet? It's so different from the old reporting on cases that we would see. I mean, things just go viral. Misinformation goes everywhere, and so it's just people are very judgmental these days. You got the anti-vaxxers, the vaxxers. We're very divided, and so the question is, how do we deal with kind of information we have today in the legal system?
Well, that's interesting. And you're talking about Amanda Knox, right? Just now, how public perception convicted her even before they had a chance to see all the evidence, which is unfortunate because I think Amanda Knox now lives in West Seattle. And she's trying to integrate her life back into the mainstream. I actually would be interested in interviewing her on the show. Love to have her. I think she's working as a paralegal now. Is that right?
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. And she just had a baby, and she's West Seattle. Everyone in West Seattle has been so supportive of her. Everything from the newspaper, the West Seattle Herald, to the restaurants and everything else. She worked for the West Seattle Herald when she came home from Italy. They gave her a job as basically an arts writer, and so I think I guess I'm really impressed with the way West Seattle has treated Amanda. She's one of their own. She's one of our own in Seattle.
Yeah, she's. I read about the case and the conviction and all the sensational details of this case. And I sometimes talk to my friends about, you really got to look into the details. You can't just rely on what you read in the news and, judgment from there.
Right. And the thing in Amanda's case, there were only two items of physical evidence. There was a bra clasp and there was a knife. And the knife, they said, was tied to Amanda and Meredith. It wasn't. The bra clasp, they said, was tied to Raffaele, her boyfriend at the time. That had not been collected for like 45 days. It turned from white to black. It was dropped. There was all kinds of cross-contamination. We called it Fellini forensics in terms of how the crime scene was mishandled. But the knife, turned out there was not even human DNA on it. It didn't match the wounds in any way. The Italian courts on appeal finally appointed 3 independent experts. Those experts said those two things, the only two things of evidence in the case, were contaminated, compromised, and inadmissible. That's it. That was the whole case right there. And there was no case.
Do you think, so I read about this case and the opinions that some people had of her. Do you think that the Italian court convicted Amanda Knox because of the way she was living, more like a character judgment of a young American lady who came to Italy to study, and she may have her own way of expressing herself as well as how she the lifestyle that she, well, at the time, 19 years old, we're still trying to find our ways in the world. And so she's being judged for some of the behaviors that she was exhibiting with those around her. Do you think she was convicted partially because of that, or largely because of that?
That's beautifully said, Monique. That's exactly right. She was, they said the probable cause was that she was kissing her boyfriend. That's a really famous picture we've seen, that she went out for pasta that night, and then she shot for lingerie. I mean, that's what was said. She had to go get clothes because her house was a crime scene. She had to eat. And that picture of her kissing her boyfriend, the next frame, and I've seen it, she's looking really despondent. They asked her to list her sexual partners. They told her she had AIDS. They didn't like her attitude. The prosecutor, Monique, who was basically prosecuted and convicted for abuse of office during these trials, and there were 3 trials, he basically, he called her a she-devil, that she was basically a temptress that was tempting, an Italian young man. And so a lot of it was basically, young, attractive, female from the United States that they completely vilified, and especially this prosecutor. And to call her the she-devil in a closing argument in a trial, it was unbelievable. But that's the way that she was viewed. So you're exactly right. It wasn't about the evidence. It was about the way they saw her.
The perception of her.
The perception of her.
I actually, I would like to hear your opinion about the court here as well. And of course, you are still practicing law, so I'm sure, you have your opinion. But, I want to hear authentic, honest opinion, because people are people, and we will make sweet judgments about things that we don't fully know, at times things that we read, misconstrued, misinterpreted. So do you think that in our society, King County, Seattle, Washington State, could those kind of misconstructions and character prejudgment occur? And of course, I want to hear your authentic opinions here. Does it occur often?
I think so. I've practiced a long time, and I've seen it. I've defended people that were misperceived, shall we say, in the press, and including I've spent a lot of years defending police officers. Not as much recently, but I am defending one of the officers in the Manny Ellis case. And what people say, about the police, especially these days, what they say publicly, what the press says, what's disseminated, it's very hard to combat with the real facts. The one good thing we have in this in King County is we used to have, and we're going to start having again, inquests when there's officer involved deaths, that we have a jury decide the who, what, where, when, how, the circumstances of a death, and it's a public hearing so that these things get aired, publicly, and people can understand what happened.
Wow. Do you think the inquest process is necessary, and are you scrutinizing it? Are you looking at it from an attorney's point of view or a citizen point of view? What do you think about that?
Well, I think that the Supreme Court, there was a challenge to the inquest procedures. There was changes through the King County Executive's office, and basically the Supreme Court has now ruled unanimously on how they should be held. And I haven't handled one since that opinion came down. I've done those many, many times before the opinion came down. Let me say this: I think it's super important that we have a public airing of the details. And because here's an example, look at Derek Chauvin's case. Look at the fact, in other police deaths around the country, there's a grand jury a lot of times that's secret in terms of the indictment. There's an investigation without a public airing, like an inquest. So all kinds of facts and misstated facts or misunderstood facts get out there before a trial, and a trial can take a long time. At least here in Washington, only in King County, we've got this interim procedure and process before a potential criminal trial, before a potential civil case. We air out the facts of what happened. So I've always thought that was valuable for the public to know the facts and circumstances of an officer involved fatality.
Right. So now you are done with the Powell's case. What are you working on? What's coming up for you?
Well, I'm working on a number of things that just individual cases. I've got no major trials coming up right now. I am assisting one of the officers in the Ellis case. And then, for once in my life, I'm not looking at a major trial in the next couple of months. So
right.
I'm not going to tempt fate and like take on anything right now, because it's kind of nice to help people individually on certain matters, and to to spend a little time with my family and friends. As during the pandemic, I was trying that Cox Powell case, and then had a lot of things to catch up on afterwards. I do want to say again to that jury, though, I mean, they were so amazing, because we started it when the pandemic started 2 years ago in February. Right. We recessed in March because of the pandemic. We came back in August, and then the jury returned the verdict. I don't know of any case where a jury during the pandemic did that. It was an in-person trial.
Really?
It was an in-person trial, and down in Pierce County. Everyone was masked, distanced, everything else, but even though we had like a 3-month break or hiatus, it might have been closer to 4, all the jurors came back, every one of them, during a pandemic. I've never seen a jury like that before. They were just amazing.
Wow. Fascinating. Now, your book, would some of the cases end up in there? Do you mention all the local Washington cases and some national cases in the upcoming book?
Yes, I talk about Amanda Knox quite a bit, and that's kind of the main thread through the case of a real injustice that was done. But I also talk about everything from the Michael Jackson case, which I covered. I was down in Santa Maria for 6 months covering his case back in 2005, and talk about the O.J. Simpson case, of course, because that's one that everybody can relate to. And then I talk about everything from Chauvin to Rittenhouse to Arbery, beyond, because those are very they're what?
They're notable cases. Everyone know who these people are.
Excuse me. Yeah, everybody knows, and everybody. I had opinions in the Rittenhouse case. I think the Arbery case was one that most people agreed that was clearly one where they should have been convicted. But in Rittenhouse, that's an example of a case where a lot of people think that there was misinformation in the press, and people from both sides think that. People that think he was guilty feel that way. People that think that he was acting in self-defense feel that way. Interesting that you have a case that was pretty polarizing, where a lot of public people made public comments that both sides felt like that there was a great quantum of misinformation out in the press about the Rittenhouse case.
What do you think about it? If you, I mean, I'm sure you express your opinion in the book, right?
Yeah, I felt like it wasn't until I really started to watch that case, and then we were covering it on Court TV. And one night, my panel, at the same panel every Tuesday night, we were watching some of the testimony in Rittenhouse, and we all kind of went, it's amazing that each one of those incidents, there was a good argument for self-defense. Really hard to believe, because I can't countenance someone going in with that kind of weapon in public at all. However, when you analyzed each one, he had an argument for self-defense, especially where the state has to prove, the prosecutor has to prove the absence of self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt. That's really hard. And so my feeling was, given the law of self-defense, given that the judge struck the illegal weapon charge, remember? That was, the judge dismissed that. So therefore the jury had to presume he was legally carrying that firearm. I could understand the jury finding as they did, based on that standard where the state has to prove that he didn't act in self-defense. I mean, one, he's got someone grabbing a gun, he's got the next one being assaulted, he said, with a skateboard. And in the third instance, that purported victim actually pulled a Glock on him. So on each one, right? Remember, it actually, I could see it. I know there are a lot of people that disagree with the verdict. They feel like he was a vigilante. They feel like he was, he was not entitled to self-defense in any of these. I understand that. It's just, I can see where the verdict came down. I can also see the arguments on the other side, because how in the world could he be involved in a situation where he's shooting 3 people? Right.
No, I saw him when the judge announced his not guilty verdict. He's just a kid breaking down. He couldn't. I mean, I actually read it. I read it. Whenever I read these cases, I read in the details, and what they say, the devil's in the details. And if you don't see the details and you just sweep through it, you will come off with a completely different spin, different interpretation, and you can't have a true understanding and a conclusion of anything if you don't take the time and learn the details. And I think in your case, whenever this is the first interview I have of you, but I am impressed with the level of details that you scrutinize on each of these cases, and I can't wait to read that book. So we are coming to an end here, and I appreciate you coming on Afternoons with Monique and sharing your work and your perspective and mention some of these with us. Okay?
It was such an honor and a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my honor. All right, folks. That's Ann Bremner, legal commentator and analyst. All right. Well, moving on to the next segment. It is Lunar New Year this week. So I'm wearing red, and I wish everybody a happy Lunar New Year. Go celebrate, enjoy your family and your loved ones. Next week, we will have a poet laureate. Her name is Claudia Castro, who will be on Afternoons with Monique to share about her work and her background and some of her poems. Okay, looking forward to seeing you folks again next week.